What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Filsinger Games Character Spotlight with Mike and Brock.
I'm Mike.
I'm Brock, and we're once again joined by Mr. Mark Ashby. How you doing, Mark?
All right, I'm on the moon tonight. So if you got a video element of this, everybody will see that. No, I'm just trying to be mysterious, I guess.
Well, we
I think this
I'm doing
appreciate you
is
great,
being
thanks.
here.
this
Good.
is I think your second time on the show.
Yes, yeah, we talked about I think Collector and some of the 2093 guys last time I was on here. So yeah,
Yeah. So this time, since you're we're doing our countdown to GalactiCon, and you're kind of like the grandfather of GalactiCon, the creator of it.
hey, you got white in your beard too. Now, come on, you don't have to call me grandfather and insult me like that.
It's just blonde. It's not white. Yeah.
Oh yeah, sure.
So, what got you the idea to create a GalactiCon?
Well, I mean, we were doing the Club Galactica Super Report. I think it was just sort of a kind of a natural progression that, you have a fan club, and once we proved that that was viable enough, by the time we really started thinking about Galacticon, we were probably pushing 100 members. We might have been in like the 80 or 90 range. And a lot of them were East Coast based, assuming that, a convention, if it was going to happen, was probably going to be either Cleveland area or Jamestown, where Tom was based out of. It was just going to be the easiest. Although we originally were thinking about doing it in Maryland, where I'm from, or originally from. And so it was just, we thought, well, we've got all of this community happening here. Let's see if we can actually do things together, because back in the day, I'm like really mysterious now. Back in the day, you just had the mail. That was the only way that you could get in contact, and people were sending letters and results and everything back and forth. It's like, well, it would be kind of nice to meet these folks in person. So that's really kind of what started it. So that was, me talking with Tom and just figuring out what the logistics of it all were going to be.
It was like I remember reading about it in some of the early newsletters because I think one of the first. I think I still have my Club Galactica membership
The
card.
membership card, yeah, the ones that David Fisher did. Yeah.
I think I was like number 54.
Yeah, you would have been, yeah, because I think the initial one we had like 30 something, but it picked up pretty quick after that.
And so I saw it, and I remember like thinking, this could be pretty, a pretty cool thing to do. And I through the newsletter I had met Paul Barnes because it just happened that there were only like 8 Canadians in the in the newsletter, and three of us were in the same city.
That's like a lot of sci-fi wrestling types in that town. So,
So we decided to to carpool it down.
hmm yeah, I got well, Doug Morgan and John Race, they lived in town, and then there was another one that Bill Baxter, yeah, they were all a year younger than me, but they were all in Frostburg. But then there was a guy that joined the club from a town that was just down the road from me in Cumberland, Maryland, and I never did meet that kid. I know where he lived now. When I looked at the address on the old Super Report, I was like, oh, I know Decatur Street. Yeah, I know exactly where that is. But I don't think he lives there, 30 some years later. But it's kind of funny how, yeah, you would just find like little pockets of people that were, fairly close by. And I think you had these little like mini groups, and why not, make it a bigger group if you possibly could. Make a trip out of it. Make your parents drag you there, because we were all, most of us, just barely driving age at that point,
It's
if that.
true.
Yeah, I think the majority of us were probably between 14 and 17.
Yeah, my first Galacticon, I would have been 6. I guess I was just barely, not quite 17, because I would have been 89, right? So I was only 16 then. Yeah. So, yeah, 89, 90 in that range. Yeah, 16, 17.
Yeah, I think I was 16 the first one.
Mm-hmm.
I think the only two people of drinking age were Steve and Tim.
Yep. Tim always talks about being this old man, feeling like, looking back on it, like, how in the world did, these, that I think it was okay to hang around with all these young
He's
kids.
25 years old hanging out with a
Yeah.
bunch of,
Yeah.
14 and 17-year-old
It was
kids.
the 80s, the 90s. Who cared? Man, it's all good. We're wrestling fans. We can handle ourselves.
Nowadays, might be frowned upon.
Yeah, I don't think you could do that anymore. It's like it's gone the way of lawn darts and stuff like that.
I was talking about that story you told when your parents just dropped you off at Tom's house, random, like some guy you've never met. Just
Hmm. The year
here you
before
go.
GalactiCon, yeah, when I did the interview, because my cousin was getting married in New Jersey that weekend, so they basically drove up to Jamestown, drove all the way across to New Jersey, went to the wedding, drove back and got me, and then we drove back home. We made this nice little V shape. They were very tired by the end of that, but they were very nice and very understanding of the fact, yeah, that I was going to be staying at the strange man's house.
Different times.
Different times, yeah. Well, I mean, it wasn't like he was a total stranger.
No, no.
Obviously, no, no, nothing untoward going on in the Filsinger home in Jamestown. No worries.
Yeah, because I think Alex he wasn't even
He
one.
wasn't born yet. No, not that first year. He was a baby for the first GalactiCon. Yeah,
Yeah, the first GalactiCon, he was maybe 2 or 3 months old, I think.
yeah, that would have been 19. Yeah, because 1990, he was born the end of '89. Yeah.
And
Wow.
and I remember this is one thing that sticks out. Steve Minskoff's first wife comes up to me and she's like, "I heard you're from Cambridge." And I'm like, "Yeah." She goes, "That's where African Lion Safari is. I love going there." And I'm like, "What?"
Small world stuff. Small world when you get these little wrestling fan enclaves, I guess.
And it was kind of neat seeing the groups of people, come out, and then the following year when it was going to come out again, people were excited. Hey, hopefully these same guys, because I don't think any of us really had phone numbers like that we decided to exchange.
Right. Yeah.
And
I had a lot of people calling me, so because I would put it in the newsletter just to be a clearinghouse. But yes, quite often my mother I'd be downstairs and I would hear, "Hello? Yeah, hold on, Mark, there's a phone." Some strange guy says he's from Nebraska or wherever.
I remember I called you once. Rob and myself did it, and his mom would only allow us to, because we were at his place, would only allow us because my mom would cancel the phone
Mhm.
um, June through August.
Okay.
That way I wouldn't be in the house. So she
One way to
canceled
kick you out.
she canceled TV and cable.
Get out of here.
Yep.
School's out. I don't want to see you. Yeah.
And so I remember we wrote you and said we're going to call you on this date at like 11:01 because the prices dropped to like 10 cents a minute.
Hmm.
But prior to that, it was like 50 cents a minte to call the
Right.
US back then.
Hmm.
So we're like, okay. So we called you up and you're like, yeah, you can, you mailed us back and said, okay, yeah, I'll be prepared.
That's great. You're lucky I'm a night owl, so because 11:01 be a little late for some folks, but not for me.
Because I think you came to the first 10 or more conventions.
Oh, a lot more than that. Yeah. I mean, I came into like the early, I mean, it was right around when my younger son was born, 2005. It was somewhere around like when he was a baby. That's when I was just kind of like moving on. It was parenthood. I'm sure, you guys, Brock
Yeah.
is way more into it at the moment than either you or I are. I mean, you got a daughter who's married now. I have kids old enough to be married if they ever showed any inclination in that direction, but they don't. They both seem to have their interests, and that's good. And girls would just mess it up. But yeah, once you get those kids around, it's like some of the hobbies just sort of go like, yeah. And then I was so far out of it by that point that it was just kind of like, well, I don't think I can catch up anymore. I'll just stay in touch with the people that are important, like y'all. Here I am.
All
But
right.
That's the one thing I remember is Tom was giving one of his speeches, and then Kirk Campbell comes back and he's like, "Hey, Tom's talking about the new set coming out," and there was you, Tim, myself, and actually it might have been Kurt. Somebody else. I think it might have been Kevin Butcher come in, and the four of us are sitting playing euchre.
oh yeah, I remember that. Hmm.
And you're like, "What are you guys doing playing euchre?" Because this may never happen again.
Right. Yeah.
And I think that was your last year because you never came back, and we're like, "Oh, we could have had a." And same as Kirk. That was Kirk's last one as well.
Mm. That's entirely possible. Yeah. I mean, I feel like it was more than 10, but I know I didn't get to 20.
Oh yeah, it was more than 10.
Well, my younger son was born in '05, so you figure maybe like 15 or so, somewhere in
But yeah, that's just one of the weird things where like, the whole game's going on. And we're like, let's just play some euchre.
there. At this point, who cares? What are we doing? Champions of the Galaxy. Well,
Yeah,
is it wrestling? Okay, whatever. Yeah.
we just developed such a strong friendship over the years because that's just something that happened along the way. You look forward to seeing these people every year.
Yeah,
Mhm.
well, I mean, you wrestling might have been the initial, in comic books, all of that stuff might have started things, but then you find, there's other common interests, or at least, reasons that you might want to hang out at other times of the year other than this one time, or at least be more in touch with each other. But gosh, people are, naming their kids after, friends and the game and stuff like that at this point, or they're, visiting each other for weddings and christenings, whatever. It became quite the thing. And I don't know if it would have happened if we didn't have the yearly gatherings, with the Galacticons. It might have been if it had stayed just more or less, virtual,
Yeah.
through the mail and phones and things like that. But, I think the convention certainly it accelerates the process of getting to know somebody if you're in the same room with them. So,
Mhm.
Like, that's one thing Tom admitted on one of the shows that without the Galacticon, the game might not be around because it kept him motivated to
mhm.
write because he'd see everybody and
Yeah.
everybody get into the game. So, without you creating this, there might not, the game might have ended, after 5 or 6 sets.
hmm I mean, well, I always wonder because I don't, you guys, it seems like people remember things better than I do. I mean, I may have had been one of the people that had the initial idea to do a convention, but I don't feel like it was just solely me going like, let's have a convention. I feel like there was probably a group of people who would be like, wouldn't it be great if we could have a convention? And I just happened to be in the position as the fan club editor
Yeah.
that I was sort of the central point where like, okay, well, let's start talking about this. I know I was definitely for it. So whatever I could do to make it happen. Like I said, we were talking about one of the hotel conference rooms that was in the town that I lived in, Frostburg, to have it there. I knew a lot of people that had events there, so I don't think it would have been that difficult to book it. But then, it wound up being in Jamestown. That kind of became the homeland for however many years there. It was just the pilgrimage site.
Yeah.
It's funny. Apropos of nothing, and he didn't even know I was going to be on with you guys tonight. My son started, who's the younger son, who's a bowler. He was talking about Erie, Pennsylvania, and I said, I've never actually been, because he's bowled in Erie. And I was like, I've never actually been in Erie, but I drove past it a lot of times. And he looked at me and goes, why would you have gone up by Erie? I said, well, this convention, you remember Champions of the Galaxy? I used to have to drive past Erie to go up there every year. So we were just just came up with my family today, even though, he knows about the game, but I mean, I never played it with him or anything like that. I do have the sets. Actually, they're sitting in the room right next to me right now. But yeah,
Yeah.
it's just funny that today of all days that came up. We were talking about Jamestown.
Because you restarted your promotion after you sold one of your original 500 to
I
Barry.
did. Yes, I did. I haven't played in a few. I'm still in 2087. Oh boy, who are my champ? Because I haven't played for like a few months. I haven't played like since winter. I'm pretty sure the Greek gods are my. I think it's Star Wars and the Greek gods are my champs, and then Kraken is my interplanetary champ. I believe is who I've got right now. I need to pick them back up. I mean, there's no excuse. They're sitting right there. I got the summer. It's not as busy right now. So maybe, you have me on in another 5 years or so. Maybe I'll be up to 2088 by then. Who knows? I'm playing it at the Mike Delve, speed of
Yep.
how many cards you do a year.
Nothing wrong with that.
No, I don't ever plan on catching back up to anything.
As somebody who sped through and tried to catch up, I regret every minute of it. I wish I'd have just taken my time and got to enjoy all the characters like I did the first set. So definitely take your time. That's my advice.
Mm.
But
And now that I know how to actually play the game, because as we learned at
oh,
conventions, like we all had different, we thought we
Right.
knew the rules. And then we're like, what are you doing rolling for you can't do that. That's, you got to go back up a level. What? Yeah. So now that I know how to play it, I feel like I'm actually doing it right now. And I'm not throwing in my own characters and
Hmm.
stuff like that. I'm just doing it purely by the book.
Yeah, because I actually built a Fed out of all your bootlegs that you made, like Prince Zales and
Oh yeah,
Kingpin,
there were a ton
Solar
of
Hawk.
them. You definitely could have done. I probably had like 70 or 80 bootlegs. Yeah, it was
Yeah,
it was a lot.
you had Mr. Who, Mr. What, Mr. Where,
Yeah,
all those
those were
guys.
actually my brother Bob's idea because he it was from the book A Wrinkle in Time, I think it was. There was Mrs. Whatsit, so he was like, "How about a Mister Whatsit? Who is Mister Whatsit?" And so then we just started like doing a Who's on First kind of thing. It was like all of
That's
those
fun.
guys. So
And
that's where that came from. I
they
made the
were all pretty
characters, but I
average,
think he
and
had the idea of it.
you created one tough guy, the Mystic Slayer.
Yeah.
He was your big,
Mhm.
your main guy. Yeah, I
He was a
remember
tough
that.
guy. Yeah. hmm
I had
Yeah,
no
you'll
problem.
remember way more of them than I did. You said Prince Zales. I was like, oh yeah, Prince Zales. Oh yeah, okay, I remember. Okay. Oh yeah, this guy. Oh yeah, that guy. Sure. I remember. No, I do remember Mystic Slayer though.
But switching gears. So, how did it come about where you were gonna create a rival GWF Fed, the CPC?
Well, Tom wanted to. I guess it was just I don't know if experiment is the right word, but there were so many characters that were kind of going to fall by the wayside that could have had a second life in another Fed. And I think just having the angle of Magnus Colby's got a lot of money, he could always bankroll something else. Um, so that became kind of the impetus for creating a new Fed, and he asked me if I'd be interested in writing it. So I had a lot of experience, obviously, with the bootlegs, like we talked about. So I think I basically knew all the card creation rules at that point, but from the guy who wrote the unofficial, official Galactian history for Super Reports. I'm a storytelling kind of guy. That was one of my dream jobs would have been to be a writer. So I was all about it. So yeah, I mean it was Tom's idea, and when he asked if I would do it, then sure, I'll give this a shot. Why not?
And how many sets did you write?
You're asking me. I have no clue. We started 2112. I know was the first one. I think we got like 8 or 9. I think we got to like 2120 somewhere in there.
Oh, so you had a
Um,
good run.
but yeah, it was a pretty good run. I mean, 2 a year. So it was a lot of fun. Like I was always more of the, and I've said this on the Uncharted Territories. I was always more of the focus on the story rather than on the like the guy's abilities or the card creation. I really was into the stories, just because all the angles, if anybody who's listening followed it, the whole thing with Saboteur, Shylock, Rhiannon, like all of those were like my A story. And then you had the guys like with Thane, the whole thing with his wife, taking her from her people, and there's the whole religion angle and all of that. That was kind of always my main B plot. That was just sort of like the through line for all of the CPC sets that I ever did, or POWs they wound up becoming. So yeah, I was always a story based guy, and I mean, Tom always was too. I think if you asked Tom, he would probably say he liked writing the stories and coming up with the angles and the interesting people that were gonna invade or change their characters. He did a ton of that even in the early days. So I was just more or less following in his footsteps, putting my own stamp on it.
Did you find it difficult writing like different story arcs for, your main guys right down to your jobbers to make sure everyone had at least an interesting arc?
Yeah, I didn't want anybody to feel left out. So I definitely, what I would do usually is I'd get a notebook and I would write out all of the feud, I would put the factions and whatever the feuds were, I'd, line them up kind of like, okay, this is the main guy going against, this is the tag team, this is whatever. So you line it up and then you can kind of like draw arrows if you're going to switch things around, like, okay, well, these guys are going to turn, or maybe they're going to start feuding with somebody else. I'm always very visual that way. So if I was gonna, come up with whatever changes I was gonna do, I needed it in front of me to know that I wasn't leaving anybody out, or at least that I had something planned for them to do. It just yeah, because I don't like leaving loose ends hanging. I never did. So it was important for me to, even from the top to the bottom, but still make it all make sense. I didn't just want to like shoehorn somebody into something that didn't make any sense. I'm not saying I batted 1,000 on that, but It was always the goal to make sure everybody was accounted for.
Well, that's good because I haven't reached the stuff you've written, so I've heard of the characters. I'm still unsure, of all your arcs. Are there any of the characters that stand out that you still, can remember and
For
like?
me, it was the whole Shylock Saboteur angle. The swerve that I had with the, spoiler alerts for anybody who might want to be listening. It's been how many years now? 20 years or something. You should have, caught up at least by now. But with Shylock and Saboteur, because my first set in 2112, they were partners and they were heels. But then there was this conspirator character that was, sort of dogging them, and it was kind of in the realm of, like Sting coming from the rafters, like there's this mysterious person. Well, you didn't really know who it was, but the entire time since I had conceived those characters, I was Saboteur was going to turn on Shylock. That was just baked into it from the beginning. That was the first story that I had thought of, and so those two, and then getting Rhiannon involved later, with the mind, her mind got taken over against her will, even though she was pretending to be Shylock's, on his side. That was definitely my favorite, just because I was like, when that swerve came, whatever, I think it was 2115, whenever Saboteur finally turned and people were like, "Oh my God, dude, how did you do that? I never saw it come." I was like, got him. I got him. Like, nobody saw it. Nobody saw that Saboteur was the conspirator the whole time. So yeah, I got a big thrill out of, whenever something like that would happen that nobody saw it, or at least nobody admitted to have seen it coming.
Well, that's good. I'll look forward to that swerve.
Yeah. So sorry to disappoint you there, Mike, but you're gonna.
By the time he gets there, he will have forgotten about it.
Yeah, there's a good chance. I get surprised every so often. I'll read this and I'm like, oh, I just found out that the Transvaal was just bought at a marketplace and put on auction.
Yep.
Anyone could have picked it up.
Doomsayer's bargain bin, yeah.
And some random dude now has it, and I'm like,
Mhm.
it just stops getting written about. But I'm like, it was put up for auction.
Mm-hmm. That seems like something that, like the galactic government might want to have, a little bit more tighter hold over.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like a pretty potent potential weapon.
Oh yeah, like we look back on some of the things. I'm like, the gladiators are big into slavery.
Right.
Like, I don't know if that's still frowned upon.
It's all for the story arc. All for the story arc.
Like, they're kind of bad guys. You should probably stop cheering for them.
Yeah. Well, it is a different world now. It's, without getting political on it, I won't go there.
Oh, yeah.
So, never mind.
But let us switch over to our 5 questions, which we
All right.
Are asking all our guests. So if you could pick any 4 wrestlers plus one, alternate, who would be your top GWF wrestlers? Could be CPC.
We're talking singles? Or
Yeah.
Okay, let's go singles. I would say Sentimental Reasons, Mesmer. Anybody who knows me, Mesmer was my guy. I just always kind of like that character. If we're going for big power kind of guys, I mean Monolith. I'll put him in because he was pretty darn unstoppable when I was playing. And by the time I had stopped playing, he was still pretty much in his prime, as far as I can tell. To mix it up a little bit, let me think, because you got like a Mesmer guy, you got a Monolith guy, because my writerly brain wants to go like, don't necessarily pick like the best guys, like the top, performers.
Yeah, it's your favorite.
Yeah. I always liked was Enigma. I liked Enigma, like that cruiserweight. Like he was just one of those guys. He wasn't super successful for me, but he always put on good matches, it seemed like. So I'll throw Enigma in there. And if I could throw in one of my own guys, I'm gonna go with Puma. He was one of my CPC guys. He was an Animan.
Yeah, I remember him.
He had a fun story arc too, but
He had an interesting finisher. It
yes.
went up.
Yeah. So yeah, Puma, let's just, to kind of like give as varied of the types of, GWF characters that there were, I think it's only appropriate I throw an Animan in there.
And then you can throw in an honorable mention.
All right, an honorable mention. For my brother, I'll go Massive, an original guy. My brother was all about Massive. So there's my picks.
Okay, if you could pick any one holiday, what would your favorite holiday be?
A holiday. I'm a Christmas guy, I think. I just like the festiveness of the season. It's not super cold by that point where I live anyway. Doesn't get really cold until January usually. So, but yeah, just the, getting together with family and the giving and receiving and the food and I don't know. I always have good memories from Christmases past.
And if you had the money to, one place you'd like to visit.
Australia. I would love to visit Australia. One of these days I'm going to make it happen. I would say something. I always used to want to go visit like the Arctic of Canada, or like northern Alaska and stuff like that. But I don't think I would want to spend a lot of time there. I think it would be kind of fun for a day, to just be like, wow, there's nothing here. Okay, get me out of here now. But it's very hard to get out of there once you're there.
Right.
So, but Australia, as long as I don't meet up then with any of those, awful spiders and things that'll kill you down there, then
There's a lot of stuff that'll kill
yeah,
you
there's a
there.
lot of stuff in Australia. But, I mean, I know a few people in Australia too that I've never met, but I would like to hang out with. Yeah, it seems like a very different kind of place, and it's so far away. Yeah, I would say money is no object. That's where I'm going.
Okay. And since almost everybody involved in this game is, some fan of a Star Wars fan, if you were going to have a lightsaber color, what would it be?
I'm blue, dabba dee dabba die. Yeah, I'm blue's always been my favorite color, so I'm going blue. I'm no Sith.
And the last one, what's an unknown fact about Mark that you'd be willing to share?
Who? About me. Let's
That
see.
people might
Good.
not know about you.
Um, about me personally, I was going to say one, but it's technically about my son.
That counts.
Okay. Well, it's about me and my wife. It's about all three of us. My younger son Trevor was born through in vitro fertilization. He's a test tube baby. And he had a twin. It would have been a fraternal twin that did not survive past 8 weeks in utero. And we always say he absorbed that personality because he's got enough personality for two people. But yeah, just to kind of say, well, why were you doing IVF? It's because both my wife and I have fertility issues, and I don't mind talking about that. I have stupid sperm. I have plenty of them. They're just not formed right, most of them. So there you go. How about that for oversharing?
That counts.
It counts.
First thing I could think of, but it's definitely an interesting thing. So
And
spread it
Trevor
far and wide
now,
over the internet. Now it's out there.
and Trevor now is a very successful bowler.
He
Yep.
is. Well, I mean, yeah, he's certainly working on it. He's bowling tonight. Apparently he's doing fairly well. They just like local event. Well, not local to us, but just a, small bowling alley thing where you pay like $40 entry. You might win a couple hundred at the end of the night. But yeah, he's on
I've been
PBA tour
following him
now.
online.
What's that?
I said I've been following him online.
Yeah, I appreciate that. He's very lax about posting when the season is not going on. I'm like, you got to get the social media followers, man. That's currency now. It's in his contract, like if you have a certain number of likes on a thing, you get like credit for equipment and stuff. So
Wow.
Do
he's
you
signed to
still do that
Storm.
podcast, the YouTube or podcast show?
What I want to do, we are going to start that back up, but I want to get better equipment. So I'm looking into like, investing into really good like camera and microphone equipment because I don't want to just do it if we're not going to jump in because I actually had the thought I kind of want to do like a little, almost a mini documentary about how hard it is to be, one of the guys that is, the unknowns on tour, because I don't know how much people know. It's not like you get a salary from the PBA. You have to pay into these events and hope you do well enough to make your
Mhm.
money back. So a lot of these guys, they have to bowl these, they call them PTQs, they're pre-tournament qualifiers, where if you're lower in points like people like him are, or they haven't won titles or things like that, you basically have to pay a few hundred just to try to get into the main field. So you might pay your 300 some dollar entry fee, drive out to Missouri and not make the field. And then you paid for a hotel, you're like $1,000 in the hole just from not even making a tournament. So I'm like, there's probably a lot of people that would be interested in seeing like the perspective of a
Yeah.
young guy, because he's going to be 20 in September. So he's a young guy trying to do it. And it's like, this is all he ever wants to do. Like he doesn't have another job in mind. He's going to
Hmm.
work in bowling somehow, whether it's as a actual pro bowler, or, somewhere with a bowling company as, like a ball rep or a designer or something like that. So that might be in the works. But yeah, the Trip 4 podcast was what we were working on. We kind of want to, like I said, we're going to do it. If we're going to do it again, we're going to do it right. But he keeps bugging me about it, and it's all my fault for not having enough money for the really good equipment. So
Because it was
stand
it
by.
was kind of weird because out of nowhere you were just like, yeah, he wants to be a pro bowler.
Well, it all came on kind of sudden because he never really bowled for any, seriousness until he was about 13. Because he was bored over the summer. The school had just gotten out, and he was doing in the entertain me father phase because I work at home. So, I'm the one that was, well, I mean, my wife was working in schools, so she was at home too. But um, he really just was like, I'm bored. I want to do something. So they have this program. I don't know if it goes into Canada, but it's called Kids Bowl Free. And if your local center participates, you pay like a $40 membership at the beginning of the summer, like around Memorial Day, and then you can get 2 free games a day. So we were like, okay, well, this sounds like fun. It's early in the summer. We should be able to get our money's worth out of this. And he just took to that, man. That was between sixth and seventh grade for him. And it just took off like that. To be honest, before that, we were like, what is his interest? Like he plays Minecraft. That's like all he does. He doesn't really care about, like, do you like science? Do you like, right? Nope. And I didn't really like any of that stuff. So the bowling thing, yeah. And I mean, his crowning achievement so far was in 2021. He placed second out of, what is it, 630 some U15 bowlers in the National Junior Gold Tournament, and he won $6,500 in scholarship money from that. So yeah, he had a chance to make a PBA TV show this past year out in Reno. He finished in the top 16 and beat a current PBA Hall of Famer to get into the round of
Oh,
16.
nice.
Bill O'Neill beat him three games to one. So, kid knows what he's doing. So, and they definitely, like, some of these bowlers that you see on TV. I saw them coming up to Trevor and like, "Hey, you bowled really good, buddy. Keep it up." I'm like, "They know my son. Wow." Jacob
He's
Buttriff knows who my kid is. He gave him a pat on the back.
he's only going to get better. He's a young guy, so
He is, yeah. I mean, it's just a lot of it is mental. Like, it's the conditions these days. It's just like they have different oil patterns. They try to make it as hard as possible out there on tour. So, it is definitely not easy, but he's hanging in. He's proven he belongs there. So I'm real proud of him. I do have
That's
another son, by the way, who's in college right now. He's working on his music degree. I don't want to leave him out and make him feel bad, but he's a lot quieter. He doesn't do social media at all. So
yeah.
I don't really
I had
have a
never
way to
done
brag
10-pin
about him or
bowling
him.
till I
But
had never done 10-pin bowling till my mid-30s.
yeah, well, he didn't. My dad was a league bowler, but he had like maybe a 175 average. He wasn't like super great.
Well, in
But
Canada we bowl 5-pin.
yeah, well, we got things like duck pins here too. I know in Baltimore it's a big thing. I don't know for like Brock around Pittsburgh. I feel like they might have some
they
duck
do.
pin lanes there too.
Yeah.
But yeah, the 5-pin bowling. I don't know that Trevor's ever done that.
Your ball's like just the
Hmm.
size of a softball.
Yeah,
And
that's duck pin too. Yeah, you just kind of like chuck it down there and hope for the best. Yeah,
yep,
duck pin has the 10 pins, but yeah, it's real hard to get a strike. Put it that way.
10-pin's catching on up here. We're getting more and more of it.
There's a few Canadian bowlers on tour. There's Francois Lavoie, Graham Fa. They live in the U.S. now. What's that one guy's name? Oh, There's another one. He has that French accent. He does. I think his last name is Richard. I don't remember, but yeah, he doesn't bowl as much these days. But Francois Lavoie does. You would think by his name, but he sounds as American as the rest of us.
But we're nearing the end of our time here. But thanks for coming out, Mark.
Yeah, thanks for letting me blab about my kids and my sperm count and all of that.
Always a pleasure. Nice catching up with you.
Yeah, thanks, guys.
All right, everybody. If you're new here and haven't done so yet, please click that subscribe button below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. While you're here, scroll on down to the description where you will see all of our friends who make Filsinger Games related content, including the official Filsinger Games podcast roll up, the Legends team's Uncharted Territory, Dizzy Dice from Lee Lamprey, solo promoter from Grant Pachoco. Grant is also here on YouTube, along with Dave Little's Heartland Championship Wrestling, Bucky749, and Brad Plays 81. I'm on Twitch every once in a while these days. Check that out. The link's below. And hopefully we see you all at GalactiCon. Till next time, have a great week, everybody.
Night all.